Well, something good first, though.
Okay, so we had three big, wait, was it, no, it was four big casting announcements that came out for Percy Jackson this week. So Cersei got announced, Polyphemus, we finally got our Allison, and we got a new Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah, the last two are the ones I'm the most excited about.
Yeah.
So I will say, just to kind of go in chronological order, um, the Cersei one,
Hmm.
um, the thing about that I was glad about was that they said that she's supposed to be like a new age guru. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, I love them making fun of that and like calling that out because I hate those people so much. They're so like they take advantage of people really badly, and so I love the even though I was surprised that Cersei is like older,
Hmm.
if she's older so that they can make like commentary about the new age like life coach guru, like take my $500 course to learn how to manifest your dream life, people. If that's what they're going to do with it, then I'll be really happy with it.
Yeah, and it fits with the whole spa theme, right? Of making her almost like MLM essential oil queen.
I love that. Like I could see her joining Young Living or one of those other MLMs. So it also kind of goes with like the general theme that they might be doing with Annabeth that season, since Athena does show up,
Hmm.
of the whole like mom issue idea in general of like an older woman, especially if they keep her being like, why do you look so ugly? And it's like because I've been in the middle of the ocean getting killed and I just got blown up yesterday or like earlier today.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been on a life
so
raft drinking one Dr. Pepper between me and my friend.
one Dr. Pepper. I had to drag his like body when he was passed out after he crashed into the ocean and almost died onto this tiny little raft that I found on my own because I think everybody else is blown up. Like that's why my hair looks like this. So if they go like that route of her being like not approving of her and her being like, but wait, like don't be mean to me, that would just play into that sort of thing. If they go in chronological order anyway, that would be right before the sirens if they don't move things around.
Hmm.
So that would kind of set that up pretty well of her like mom related issues just being everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I mean, it is kind of like a big season for Annabeth, even though she's not the biggest figure in the story. And I do kind of like that they're highlighting that.
mhm. Yeah, they do a good job of Frick always does a good job of, even though Percy is like the point of view character, there's always a lot going on with Annabeth at the same time. Even if we don't hear it from her perspective all the time, you still like see it happening. She still always has all these things happening.
Yeah.
Outside of just whatever's going on between them. It's not a situation like that. Um the thing I thought was really funny about the guy who's playing Polyphemus, who his name I'm probably going to pronounce wrong, so I'm not going to say it. Is he looked familiar, and I was like, why does he look familiar? And so I googled his name, and he's one of like the random Cyclops in the Sea of Monsters movie. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Of all things to carry over, right?
Oh my god! I was just like, that movie is so bad. Um, I'm glad that people take pleasure out of watching us just scream about it, but I was just like, that is so funny that he was that. I guess out of everything that is in that movie, a random like no name Cyclops, like he doesn't even have like a name on the
Yeah.
IMDb for that part, is like the one thing that can survive. That and the roller coaster.
Oh my God. Okay,
But
the
that
roller
was
coaster on the island, I swear.
yeah, but that was funny, and he does have the similar sort of like build of almost looking like a wrestler that
Mhm.
like will fit where they won't have to do too much with like special effects sort of things to make it seem like he is a big cyclops. Which is nice. I always get so annoyed with like Hollywood stuff when they're like Timothy Chalamet is gonna play like the Hulk, and I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, and they do that sort of thing all the time where they like cast people that don't make any sense at all, and then they just like use all these crazy special effects to make them match instead of just casting someone who naturally looks like who they should be playing. And so at least with this, both Daniel and him are like just big, tall dudes, so it makes sense for them to play the Cyclops in this season.
Yeah.
It'll be fun just to see how they play Polyphemus, like if they insert some like humor and things like that with him, especially with the nobody stuff
Yeah.
and all that, or if they go more with I don't know. I don't think they're going to show him as being like overly villainous just because of how if they keep how Percy reacts to him the same as in the books. I they probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's more neutral, if anything.
Yeah. So to talk about the ones that made me the most happy is it's really great to know who Allison is, and that it's funny that it was the girl that everyone was speculating would be Rachel because she has red hair.
Yeah.
But no, she's Allison instead. Um, the description of her, I thought was the part that I thought was interesting was how she said that they said that she was like a true believer in like the idea of like Kronos's world, and I'm like, so you're like a fascist basically. That's interesting. But because that's basically what he believes. But the thing about that I thought was interesting, just because of what I know about people who leave like cults or just like really kind of controlling high control groups is the best term for it, really. That can include like religions as long as like actual cults and things like that, is that the people who are the most like true believers are the ones that usually leave the easiest. It's one of those weird things because when you believe in something that is so like definitive in a very like black and white way, it's always those people when they find out that like something isn't real, like something isn't true, that they spent their whole life thinking is true. It's like it's a thing of like, well, if this isn't true, then none of it is, and so I don't believe in any of it anymore, and I'm just gonna go now. Um, it's like that sort of thing. But like, if you believe in something, but you also acknowledge that there's like things in it that you don't like or that you don't agree with or whatever, it's easy for you to kind of play that game of like taking pieces that you like of it and continuing to believe. And so, them like describing her as a true believer of Luke's, it's like, oh God, like what is she doing during this season when, or not Luke's, of like Kronos's, but close enough. Um, that like what is she doing this season to try to like prove her worth to both of those people, to Luke and to Kronos at the same time. And then I also just always she's just so interesting because she's not like anyone we don't know what she's going to do because she's completely new. And so they could use her for literally anything to make a storyline better in anything that they want to do. And so I do think that it's a really cool idea for them to show like what it is like for people on like Luke's side, I guess, to show like the dynamics of that, what they think, how they talk about what they're doing, how they justify what they're doing, that kind of a thing, and like what they think about Luke. Um, too, like somebody like her, like she probably knows Luke if because she's somebody that's described as someone who left like camp, like left camp after she was at a certain age, and so um is a thing of like wondering like is she like jealous that Luke is the one that is like working so closely with Kronos, or like what does she think about that stuff, or does she not like him, or does she like him and then starts looking at him when he tries to murder multiple children that he knows and is like what are you doing, or is she the one like pushing him to do more of that stuff? It'll be like interesting to see how they decide to play her because it could be so many things. Um, it's especially interesting to think about who her like god a parent is. Like if she knows who it is, she could not know who it is because some of them don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like, does she know who her parent is? And like, depending on who it is, how does she feel about them? Is her parent one of the gods that doesn't really have like a big place at camp? Is that part of why she just like left camp and didn't stay like Luke did until he tried to kill everybody? But like, it's those sort of questions that it's really fun to just not know anything at all, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, with her, like it doesn't matter. You could read the book 700 times, you're never going to know because she's not in it. And I think that that's really exciting to add a character like that that's brand new that just makes everything much more interesting.
Yeah. And I do kind of like that they're bringing in a reason to watch the show even if you've read the books.
Mhm.
I know like being book accurate is kind of a thing that millennials especially we became sticklers for some reason. And I don't know that it's always necessary, especially because we get so little like of a snapshot of what's going on in the Queen Andromeda at all. That like, or is it the Princess Andromeda? But anyways, we get such a little snapshot that like any storyline that they say happened there that didn't happen to be a time when Percy and Annabeth were on the ship could have happened reasonably.
Hmm. And it's just I was thinking about like because the show is like the year anniversary a couple days ago
Hmm.
when the show originally premiered on December 19th, I think it was. Neither of us watched it for another month, but but it did make me think about the kind of stuff we talked about when we were reviewing the first season. And one of the things I said a lot was like, it doesn't matter if something is like book accurate because that can be really boring. Like the first two not Percy, the first two Harry Potter movies are extremely book accurate and like, but it makes the movies boring and also just kind of weird. Um, like they have scenes with like the ghosts and things like that. For example, the ghosts are the things that always pop in my head because I haven't watched those movies in a long time because of J.K. Rowling. But I remember that the ghosts at least are literally just there because they're in the books. There's
Hmm.
like no actual like reason for them to be there really. There isn't even there's kind of a reason I guess for Quidditch to be such a big thing because he does like in the second book is when um Lockhart like makes his like all his bones in his arm go away when he's playing, and it's not really a huge thing until the third book when he like almost falls to his death when he's playing Quidditch when the Death Eaters show up, or the not the Death Eaters, the other things that are stalking him in that book show up, and so it's like it's such a big deal where they have all these scenes. Like Oliver Wood as a character has absolutely no reason to exist in the movies. The guy who played him is very attractive, correct, but there is no reason for him to actually be there. He doesn't add anything to the story. He doesn't need to be there. But he's there because he's in the books. And so I really enjoyed the Percy Jackson show partly because they changed things around and made it work as its own thing. They didn't just keep things in there because they were in the books. They moved some things around and improved the story because it worked better like that way as a TV show
Hmm.
instead of just keeping everything exactly the same as the books because that's the fun of when things are adapted is to see how they are actually adapted. They're supposed to be adapted,
Yeah.
which means they are supposed to change somewhat from book form to movie or to book form to TV show or whatever. Rick Riordan was willing to change his own story. Like he's the one who came up with the outline for both seasons so far. He's fine with adding these things in and wants to,
Hmm.
and that just makes the story better. It makes it just stand on its own. And if we're gonna like, people are already very interested in what's going on with like Luke and his people. There's a lot of like kind of people just making things up out of thin air when it comes to that stuff because they just want to know about this stuff. And so if we as fans want to know about that, like why wouldn't the people writing the show want to add some stuff in just to make the story more like cohesive? It especially, I will admit though, the thing that scares the shit out of me about Allison is that she says she's in the human world, and so it scares me that she's going to try to like hurt Sally or other people like that are like the parent, like the normal parents that are in the human world, but especially Sally, because Luke obviously tries to terrorize Percy whenever he can at any given moment. And she is in that one scene that we don't understand what's going on in it. And so part of me is like afraid that she's like around Sally because Sally and Percy even like don't know that she's on Luke's side for some time or something. And it's one of those things like that. A friend of mine said that to me, and I was like, that could happen, especially because they are sneaking around on his ship. That could be when he realizes that she's with him, and that's when they realize that Chris Rodriguez is with him too. So it could be kind of like a double whammy thing of like, oh crap. I'm like, we got to get out of here. So that's fun. And and like the thing that made me the happiest about this is that they kicked Andrew Alvarez like officially to the curb.
Yes.
That made me really happy. And for anyone, I saw some like kids or whoever asking like what happened. I saw some people being like, "Oh, I think he just stopped doing it to like because of college." And can I just like state there is absolutely no way on this planet that Andrew Alvarez dropped out of being in Percy Jackson, The Olympians, to go to college. There is no way that happened. He knew when he got this part that it would be like a multi-season part. Like he used to leave comments back and forth with like Dior and Charlie, like talking as if they were like their characters and stuff when the first season was coming out. Like, no, he got kicked to the curb for being a fucking freak. Like to like put it simply, but to be to be more like specific about it, just to like reiterate this stuff, he was messaging like 13, 14-year-old fans on Instagram, which is just extremely inappropriate in general. And then some of the stuff he was doing when he was talking to those people, those kids, for like hours on end, when he was like 20, was sending them videos of like Charlie. And I guess like the videos that he was sending of Charlie was like almost like videos that it looked almost like he took them when Charlie didn't know he was recording him, sort of thing. Like videos of Charlie just like working out or like being like a normal person. And that's really fucking weird. That's really weird. That's really creepy. That's an extreme lack of boundaries, which is kind of like what we said back in July, that because of him being Mormon, he probably doesn't have any boundaries and doesn't and might not fully get, well, he gets it now, but at least before then, he might not have fully understood how weird he was being. I have a hard time believing that just because there would be people around him being part of a production like this. They definitely would have made rules about how to interact with fans and things like that, because that's just part of what productions like this do. And then on top of that, per like a Reddit post, which I have no reason not to believe, he was, I guess, also posting on his stories and stuff, trying to get fans to like buy things off of him from like the set, like buy my something something that I got from set. And I was just like, this is like so inappropriate in like a million different ways. We said like back in July that he was like, you know, not in the show anymore, because there were like people posting on Reddit at that point talking about how they had seen videos of people trying out for Chris Rodriguez. And that's obviously true because Kevin, and I forget his last name, was cast as Chris Rodriguez for season 2. And so those were obviously happening during the summer times. That's when all the casting was happening. And so it's not a total surprise. Like there's like little things that you could tell that something happened. Like the main thing was like the main like official Percy Jackson account on Instagram. They follow like everyone. Like when it comes to like the actors, they even follow the girl who played like Nancy, like the bully in the first episode that's only in this show for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
They didn't follow him. Like when I saw that video about him being like messaging minors, I looked at their account and they didn't follow him anymore.
Interesting.
And I was like, yeah, he's done. Like they haven't like announced it yet, but by that point he was done. And that was around the time when he like deleted all of his Instagram posts.
Yeah.
And like over the last like 6 months or so, he would like post a couple things and then delete them all, and then post a couple things and then delete them all. He has like 4 posts up right now, and I'm just waiting until he deletes them all again, because that's just like what he does. I think he just gets mad of that, you know, he's not in this show anymore and sees that everyone else is still doing it and having a great time, and like dramatically deletes all of his Instagram posts. Because that's the only thing I can think of why he keeps doing that, because that's weird that you keep posting things and then just deleting all of them. Like it takes a lot of work to delete every post on your Instagram. You have to do it individually. I've deleted a bunch of posts when I was super depressed in the past. It took me like hours to get rid of some of that stuff.
Yeah, like you have to actively manage that.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that the Percy Jackson like crew and how to put it like that got rid of somebody like that and was just like, no. And somebody asked Becky about it and was just like, did you guys really recast Chris? And her response was basically like, think about like Chris's version or his version of Chris as like a completely different person than who will be in season 2. And I was like, that's Becky Riordan speak for pretend like he was never even here. Yeah. And I'm like, literally, just forget about him. Just forget that he was ever even in our show. The only people that would ever know were people who are like, you know, like us that are paying attention to it all the time. Anyone else, he was in one scene in the second episode. He had like 2 lines where he told Percy who the god of like disappointment is. And like said things to Percy that made him like feel bad about himself. And like Luke was just like, can you stop talking? but that's it. That's the only scene that he's in other scenes, like he's in the capture the flag scene, but you can't really see his face. Mm-hmm. And so that's the only scene you can really fully see him. Anyone else but like people who pay close attention would never remember him enough to notice like the difference between the 2 actors. And it's safe to say that Chris Rodriguez going forward is going to have a much bigger like impact on what's going on, because at least for season 2 is when he's with Luke. And that's where he is for some time. And that's a big thing. He's one of the people who have left. He's another like traitor to camp that is like trying to hurt these kids after growing up with them. And all of those kids at camp have to be wondering like what he told people or what he knows, that they don't even think about what he would know about them to use against them now. And so it'll be interesting if they add him in at all in Titan's Curse. I don't know where, but you never know. They could try. But either way, it's really great to see a production just like slap somebody down who's being really fucking weird. And I guess I have like nothing to base this on, but I just want to say it just anyway. Mm-hmm. Is that like if he was being inappropriate with minors that he was talking to that are like Percy Jackson fan accounts that like idolize him because he's like an actor on their show, he was probably possibly somewhat inappropriate with people on set because a lot of like the extras and stuff would be around that age. And
good point.
Yeah, that's the thing that when I saw that video of them saying that he was messaging minors, I was like, get him away from all the extras on the show right now. Like his character was at all the camp scenes where all the extras are. And I was like, somebody like that would just be like that with people no matter where they are, and like use the fact that they're like, a named person. Everyone knows who Chris Rodriguez is if you're a fan of these books. Um, and so that's the thing that I mostly thought about was like I don't want him on set around like actual minors, like being able to talk to them face to face, much less talking to minors like online.
Yeah.
Like online isn't good either, but like let's not make that happen any more than it has to be. So that's like at least cut off, and he can just be Mormon somewhere else.
Yeah, I didn't
Yes,
look into like too much of the acting history of these people, but the new Chris Rodriguez has such striking features. Like his eyes are unreal.
yeah, he looks like really intense,
Mhm.
which is kind of like when you think about like him. Um, Actually, the picture for Beatrice, who plays Allison, was also like kind of like that. Like them, it may just be us projecting on their characters, but I feel like when you're on like the Kronos side, like the scenes with Luke and Chris and like Allison have to be the most ridiculously intense like scenes that you could imagine acting out in something because they're all sitting there like plotting about how to kill children that they all know.
Yeah.
Because all of them know them. Like that's I guess the point to make is that all of them went to camp for years. All of them are like the older camp people that were like the people that kids at camp looked up to. And so all of them know everything about camp. All of them knows everything about these kids that they're now trying to murder. And so it's like it's a trio of people that have like become the worst people you can possibly ever imagine and go after like literal children that all look up to them.
Yeah.
Um, for reasons. And so so like I can't even imagine what they talk about. Just death and destruction. Like
Yeah, I don't know.
just I just imagine them on that ship being like, I love eugenics. Even though two of us are like people of color, we still love eugenics because we need to go to therapy. But we haven't done that. So instead, we love eugenics and we love talking about how we think we're better than other people and everyone else deserves to be wiped off of the planet if they don't agree with our like extremely irrational way of thinking. Like, I love it. Like, I'm sure that's really fun.
Yeah, it's interesting that they gave us this like cast announcement with no trailer just yet. I don't know. Part of me is like, will they give us a Christmas present? That would be nice.
I will say this that Becky Riordan posted today on their Instagram, like the Mythomagic Instagram, a picture of like an entrance of a building in Rome, and from like the entrance you can see a statue of Perseus like holding like Medusa's head probably, and she just like commented on it that it was from like 2019 when they went to Rome, and I was like looking at that and just like staring at it like I'm gonna see what happens tomorrow. Like I'm gonna see what
Yeah.
happens tomorrow.
Because I mean,
Because
one of the first shots in the original trailer was the Perseus statue.
yes, and that's what that made me think of. And Becky likes to. I say that you need to learn how to speak Becky Riordan, even though I've only followed her on social media for a couple months, but I figured it out. So if it's very helpful if you know how to figure that out, because she's never going to overtly just say something because she can't. And it's way more fun if you don't.
Yeah.
Like it's way more fun if you don't and you give like fun little hints to see like who's picking up on what you're trying to say. But like her posting like spiders randomly in like October was her hinting about them casting Athena. And her like when people would post about wanting casting of certain things or whatever, or like with Thalia, the kind of stuff she was saying like the day that they were going to announce Thalia was her way of like telling people to that it was about to happen. Like she said something like the worst thing that could happen was not getting any new Percy Jackson news or something like that. And she responded to it just kind of like joking about it. But I remember seeing that being like, yeah, something's going to happen today. because she took the time to comment to that. Or like when people were saying like, oh, maybe they'll put the trailer out for the winter solstice like last Saturday, she responded with like a quote from the teacher at Yancey saying that like basically like you're hoping for something that isn't going to happen. And I was like, and people were like, we don't know if we can really ever like trust you because you mess with us. And I'm like, that's her saying no. Like that's her saying it's not going to happen tomorrow, but that probably means that it's probably going to happen soon, just not tomorrow, just not last Saturday. And it wasn't last Saturday. And so like we could obviously be wrong about this and nothing could happen before Christmas. But I will say that she doesn't post very much on her other social medias besides Threads. And so whenever she does, I'm always like looking at it like, I see you. And even if I think something's going to happen, I'm never going to say anything besides what I just said here that nobody's going to see until after any of this would happen anyway. It's more fun. It's more fun to be like, I think I know what you're trying to say, and then tell you about it, and then see if we're right. And then when we are right, to be smug about how we were right. Yeah. Instead of trying to, because if we make a big deal out of it, she's never going to post any of that stuff ever again, because that ruins the fun. It ruins the fun if everyone knows for sure what you're trying to say. I would much rather not say anything and then just kind of like giggle to myself as I watch people trying to figure out what she's trying to say. Maybe that's kind of mean, but I think it's fun.
It's fun. It's a fun game.
It's a very air sign activity.
Yes. I think that might be it on the casting front for now, or like the show news front.
Mm-hmm. Besides that, I'm pretty sure they're not filming now. They had their pictures from their Christmas party made me feel very poor. And I am really poor, but still I was just like, oh my God, that's so many presents. Is that what people who have money can buy? Like that's kind of shocking to me. I've never.
How many presents do you think they're obligated to buy? Do you think it's just your fellow castmates, or do you think you go crew, or
I don't know. They were like, I hope for their sake, because there's so many of them, that they do like, what are they called? Like white elephant or whatever. And a thing of like, this is the person you have to buy things for. But then the kids that are like good friends probably get things for each other like that. Yeah. Just because they're friends, but they don't necessarily like have to. Though I do think that a lot of like the adults, like the executive producers and stuff, or like the directors, get all of the like main cast things as like a thank you. And I know that all of the main character kids all got like the casting crew, like they posted about it that they got them like a bunch of like crepes and coffee and stuff for like their last day on set, which is just one of those like nice things to do. And so I feel like it's something like that, but I know they've all talked about how their executive producer guys got them like really nice gifts for like their birthdays and things like that for the kids who had birthdays on set. And so they probably get really good gifts from those guys.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they better? Considering that they're making them all look really good every time they're on screen. I can't imagine. I know that at least all of the kids who are like demigods, they all have like necklaces of like their parent on like the necklace. And it looks like they all kind of have the same one. I feel bad for Aryan because he's the only one that doesn't get one.
Yeah, he needs like a pan flute or something.
Mm-hmm. But the rest of them all have one, which is just like a sweet thing. You could tell that I'm assuming like the executive producers went out and got those for all of them whenever they all get cast and all that.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, so that's all we got for them so far until they always drop news on very random times, which makes it really fun because there's no pattern to it whatsoever. So I kind of love the like randomness that I just went on Instagram when I was working that day and somebody just like posted that they just dropped 4 more people being cast.
It was so random.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to talk about what happened today on your channel?
I guess it's kind of like spoilers for later on in for Epic if you've never listened to it before.
Hmm.
Um, we both have been avoiding. I have been avoiding, especially trying not to watch anything like where people are talking about Epic because since we're listening to it,
Yeah.
I don't want to see something that gives away something or other or whatever. I did see that like the last saga comes out on like Christmas Day. Like I think actually the live stream for it is tomorrow at like 9 p.m. or something like that. Um, and so, but I don't know like anything about it because I don't want to spoil myself for it in that way. Um, but basically, what it's a thing that happens on TikTok sometimes where you make a video for like the people that usually see your content, and then people who don't see your content see it and then leave comments just being judgmental little bitches
Yeah.
and not like thinking like at all. Like before I say like what happened, can I just say that I had at least 20 comments on that post that were people being like, why did you tag Percy Jackson in this post? That doesn't make any sense. And I commented back to one of them being like, it takes more brain power to write this comment out and post it than for you to click on my profile and read my bio.
Hmm.
Like, what do you mean? Like, if there's something that you don't understand, you could just look at somebody's profile instead of being asinine about it and acting and leaving them rude comments. But it was also like a thing of like every comment except two on that post that had 250 comments were all people being very mean. And so it becomes a thing where they all just start being mean because it feels like they're like free to just be really mean. That's basically what was going on there. But essentially, what happened was I did a post about Epic earlier today, laughing about how when I did the videos about Calypso that started us listening to it in the first place,
Hmm.
a lot of I got so many comments on those videos of people saying that like Calypso probably didn't sexually assault Odysseus because Epic is different and Jorge like changes the story and Epic it like wouldn't they he wouldn't go there, he wouldn't do that and things like that. And I was like, okay, so if he didn't include any like sexual assault with Cersei, and he didn't include any that Calypso does in the myths with him. So it seems like a safe thing to watch where there wouldn't be some of it thrown in, except that he did throw some of it in. And I found out about this today because on that post, somebody just commented and said and mentioned like this song that is called like Hold Me Down that is going to be in like the last the
Yeah, like hold
Ithaca.
her or hold them down. I've seen
It's
Jorge
called
put both
it's called
titles.
like Hold Them Down, but he wanted to call it Hold Her Down. But he
Yeah.
thought but Jorge thought that that would be too dark, and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding?" Of course it is. Like, what is wrong with you? But either way, the person commented that to be like that video, that song should have like trigger warnings on it, and Jorge had said something about how there will be trigger warnings or something like that on it or something or other, and I was like, why does there need to be trigger warnings on this song? I just got like a bad feeling the way that the person wrote it. They were being like very nice about it. They were just trying to like bring it up to like warn people, especially because it comes out tomorrow.
Hmm.
And so I and they said it had something to do with like sexual assault, and I was like, oh god. So I searched like the song name on TikTok because I've seen enough TikToks that I've just like scrolled past where I know that he posts songs like way before he's fully done with them. He'll
Hmm.
post like little clips or whatever, and I found a demo of him singing the song, and from the song it's a song where for part of it the suitors that are at Penelope's house, like Odysseus's house when he's gone, half of it is them talking about wanting to kill his son, which is like something that happens in the Odyssey. But I will say that the language they use in this, like the lyrics in this song,
Hmm.
sound like they're talking about sexual assault, even though they're not. Like he says words like we will hold him down until he stops shaking and things like that. And I was like, that is like disturbing to start off with. And then the other half of the song is the suitors talking about wanting to rape Penelope.
Mhm.
And like literally, he wanted to call it hold her down because they're singing about wanting to hold her down to do that to her. And they're like describing what you do when you do something like that to somebody. Like it made like my skin start crawling, and I like was trying to work when I was doing it, but I just like cried for a little bit and then just stopped because I had to do my job. But I was like, that's actually how like people do that. Why are you singing a song about that? Um and I was just like really upset when I saw that because I got so many comments. I still get comments on those videos from Calypso, even now, almost every day, of someone telling me that, oh, Epic is different and Jorge wouldn't write Calypso sexually assaulting Odysseus. And I was like, why the fuck did all of you say this to me when this like demo for this song where he is singing about the suitors trying to rape Odysseus's wife, and the only reason that that would be happening is to prop up Odysseus. Like that's
Mhm.
the only reason for that to happen, is to try to make him look better after he's a monstrous piece of garbage in this musical when he comes home, and which is just making a female character go through horrific trauma to prop up a man. Like there's a huge problem with that, to make a woman go through something like that on screen, not have anything to do with her, but because to make the man look like a hero to like save her from having to go through that. Like it doesn't matter if they don't complete it. He literally is supposed to come in as it's happening. Like the trauma's already done.
Mhm.
Like by that point, like is she supposed to say thank you that it didn't go all the way? Like what are you talking about? But it was more that just the idea that everyone who saw those videos about Calypso likely knew about this song, and none of you said a single fucking thing about it. Like you all sat there and said that Calypso would never do that because Epic is different, when you knew the entire time that this song existed and was going to be in the last part of this whole thing, that Jorge has somehow convinced a lot of you that in the Odyssey that happens, when that never happens. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen in the Odyssey. Like it does not happen. He does that never happens in the original story. He's literally adding in rape to make his like character look better. Like his male character look better. Like Penelope never goes through anything like that in the original story. And so I was upset about that, obviously, because I was like, what is wrong? Like, why didn't anybody ever mention this? Like, why didn't any of you like warn me about this before now? Like, how many times do I have to talk about being raped before people actually warn me about things like this? Like, usually people do who actually like think, I guess, but it's just like a crazy thing that like thousands of people who love Epic enough to know what I was talking about on those posts saw all of them and never said anything about that. And I know it's because they're like in a weird way trying to defend it by not wanting to bring it up, obviously, because they wanted me to be wrong about Calypso being really bad. And so it doesn't sound as good for them to say like, yeah, Calypso doesn't do this, but later on, like the some other people do try to do this to somebody else. So he like writes out the parts where there's rape towards Odysseus, but makes his wife go through it. That's interesting. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people saw the that post of me being upset. And one thing that happens when you're a rape survivor of any kind on the internet, like no matter what you experience, is that when you critique a kind of media that has something like that in it and you don't like it, people always get mad at you for making them like not like something about something that they enjoy. They take it out on you. And that's happened to me so many times about a lot of different things. And usually what happens when that happens is a post just randomly starts getting more views because people are, yelling at me in the comments. I at some point like just don't want to deal with it anymore, and I either like delete the post or I just turn off comments. That's usually what I do, or I like try to delete the ones that are really mean. But if all of them are mean, I just usually just turn comments off completely. But today I was like, I'm tired of this always happening. Like, this has happened so many times. I'm not the only one this has ever happened to. I've seen it happen to like friends of mine on here that experienced similar things as me before. And so I'm like, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just not going to say anything at all. I'm not going to delete any of these comments. And I just want to see how long this will go for. Like, how long will people harass someone who they know is a rape survivor because they said something that they didn't like about a TikTok musical? Like, how long will that go for? And if you want to know how many comments I got before I finally privated the videos because I couldn't take it anymore, because I was afraid that I left them going when we were live, that some of those people might come in our live and start yelling at me when we were live. It was 250 comments.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were people that were being nice to me. The rest of them were all people harassing me. You left like 2 comments in there. So it was 246 comments out of 250 of people just being horrendous to me, and 2 people that in there that were being like, oh, I'm glad that you posted this because I agree. And half of the comments were people saying that I didn't know anything about Greek mythology. when I was right about what happens at the end of the Odyssey, and they were not. Like, somebody asked me, like, did you read, like, that person who somebody asked you, but someone also asked me, like, did you read the Odyssey? And I was like, yeah, I read it in school, and I remembered that nobody gets raped at the end of it. That's why I was shocked that suddenly Penelope was in that sort of a position, because I knew that didn't happen, because I remember a lot of the Odyssey because I actually enjoyed reading it when I was in 6th grade.
Yeah. The Odyssey, as you said, the plot to kill Telemachus, that was true. And the plot to force Penelope to choose a new husband was going to happen. But they were going about it in a contest. And the whole contest, even the genius of what Penelope picks out of a contest, is part of her character growth. And so I don't know necessarily yet if that's him taking away that whole interaction, or even there's when Odysseus first comes home, he's disguised as a beggar, and her being able to somewhat recognize that it's him is also a big part of their story. Like the tests that he's able to put her through and she's able to pass when she gets home are just as important, and the tests that she puts him through and he's able to pass are important. It like shows why they're a good couple. And that's been his point somewhat all along, that he's stuck with throughout, is that like, oh, the Odyssey is about a man wanting to get home to his wife, which is true. They did have a good romance, and he did change things to make it a good romance by today's standards as well, by making Odysseus extremely monogamous. But why, bro? Like, I don't even know. Like, why is this necessary?
Yeah, and well, like, the thing we were saying before we went on was, like, Penelope is, a strong character. She's her own person. She's a strong woman. Like, she's left alone to raise her kid by herself for the entire time that Odysseus is gone. All these suitors are at her house that are trying to pressure her to marry somebody else, and she doesn't want to. And she handles all of that on her own.
Yeah.
She handles raising their kid on her own. She handles knowing how to manipulate all of those suitors. She's able to balance all of that to keep everything from going to like a bad place. And so it's like she's a very smart, well-respectable person in the original Odyssey. So like, why are you doing this story and like changing her character by making her like a woman who needs to be rescued by Odysseus when she never needed to be rescued? Like, he had to prove when he got home that he was worthy of her. That's how it should be, and that's a good relationship, and not one where he runs in and saves her in the middle of somebody trying to rape her, and that like makes him like a hero again. Like it doesn't. Like we haven't talked about the songs we listened to from Epic today. We are about to, but this version of Odysseus should like go to prison.
Yeah.
Like he is literally a monster, and I don't want him near his wife. Like I don't want him near his wife and his kids. He's dangerous. Like because of the way that they depict him in this is someone who is willing to do really horrible things for what he wants. And that is not like that as aggressively like selfish and like lacking any empathy in the original Odyssey story. The original Odyssey story was he was like feeling very conflicted and like tortured in a way about how he wanted to go home, and all these bad things kept happening, but he was like very upset about the things he was being like forced to do because he had no choice, and this was like the only way he could get home. This version of Odysseus is just like, whatever, this is more fun this way anyway. So I'm going to do it. It doesn't feel like he's that upset about it because he's doing it so much easier than the original story depicts him to be. But overall though, like when I watched that, I was like, wow, I'm never going to watch anything by this guy ever again. Like you're not like a safe person if you're inserting scenes like that that don't need to be there. Like there can be rape scenes in media if there is like a reason for it, because rape does obviously happen, and so it's not like a thing of me not wanting to see it or whatever. It's more of like the reason why it's there. Like you can have it there if there's like a purpose for it.
Yeah.
But like if the only way you know how to like fix your main character guy who acted like a gigantic monster for most of your musical is for him to literally like save his wife from being actively raped by someone, if that's the only thing you can come up with is to make his wife go through something like that as a female character, to make a female character go through that, that's all you can think of, you're not a good writer. Like you're not that good of a writer if that's the only thing you can do to like fix a character like Odysseus at the end, is to make his wife go like literally like use the trope of like a female character having to go through horrible trauma just to like prop up the guy. That's a very like vicious like rape culture trope that's in a lot of things. And I'm sorry, dude, but you're not that good at writing if that is all you can think of. There are a million other things that you could have done that would have ended with the same idea. Like, I don't know, what happens in the actual Odyssey? Like, what if you do that? Like, what if you have him show up and like have to do these things to like win his love again after he's back home and after being gone for so long, to get all of the and do like a fun like plan with Athena to get all of the suitors to leave without it turning into a violent mess.
It does turn into a violent mess.
And it does turn into a violent mess, but you could at least have it be like where he tries to figure out a way to get out of it, and then when it doesn't, he does what he has to do to like protect his family. That at least goes in line even with all of the violent stuff that he does throughout the rest of the story. But like if the only thing you can think of to save your guy character is to like make a woman go through horrible trauma that gets like displayed in front of everybody, that's just like lazy writing.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro, that's just really lazy writing. And it's like surprising because people talk about him as if he's so great, and like some of his songs and stuff are fun, but I'm like, that's not good enough. And to me anyway, I'm like, you should like go sit in a corner by yourself for a while if you insert rape scenes that don't need to be there. Like just do that, because you shouldn't write more female characters if that's what you do with them. And it's like a thing now that I know that I'm gonna like look at everything else he does for the rest of us watching this musical even more like critically, but it's like I have to, because if you write that for her, then I'm like looking at how you depict all the other characters now in this and being like what's going on? Because that was just so unnecessary. And I guess, um, like, I'm gonna make a post showing all of the things that people said to me. It's gonna take a little bit to crop 246 comments,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it. I don't care how long the video is. Like, I'm gonna do it because that was absolutely disgusting, the things that people were saying to me. And most of the things that people were saying to me, they would have been able to figure out if they just clicked on my profile
Hmm.
about, like, oh, why are you upset about this? Why are you talking about this? Why are you like blaming the internet? And it's like, you can figure out, if you don't understand why someone's upset when you see a video, why not just like scroll by it instead of telling them how stupid they are or how dramatic they're being or making fun of them for being upset. Like, when it really comes down to it, I posted a video. I said that I was a rape survivor. I looked upset in it because I was like trying to like not go to a bad place in my brain at that time. And I just like posted it publicly because of the fact that I posted that other video about Epic. And so, because we were doing our podcast today, I thought that people who like interacted with us when I was doing all our posts about Calypso and stuff would see that. I almost didn't post it publicly. I almost just posted it like privately for only my friends to see. But I just decided to post it publicly so to see if anyone else who, because there are people who have commented on those saying that they thought that Calypso was like scary and things like that. And I wanted to know if I wanted people to almost be like warned who are like me that that song is like that. Because if you don't know that and you go into watching that, listening to that song, you're gonna go to like a really bad place in your brain. And like by I want to be like very blunt. When I say you go to a really bad place in your brain, you're having flashbacks to when somebody did that to you. That's what I was doing in that video. I was remembering when that happened to me because of the words he used in that song of how accurate they were to how people do those things when that happens to you. And people all over those comment sections were just laughing at me and calling me stupid and saying that I need to like get over it and deal with my triggers. And like the last thing I'll say about that is like, you need to deal with your triggers. Like, you guys saw a video of somebody being emotional. You didn't understand what I was talking about because you've never seen my video before. And instead of, I don't know, dealing with somebody not liking something that you enjoy and like moving on from it, you instead went out of your way to be mean to me on purpose just to make me feel bad.
Hmm.
Like, deal with the fact that people will sometimes have emotions that you don't like.
Yeah.
That is you being triggered by me not hiding how I feel. Like, I usually hide how I feel. I usually don't tell anybody except for you. Like, when I'm actually really upset by something like that, I'm trying not to do that as much because I know it's not good for me in general to hide all of that and only tell like certain people how I actually feel. And you all saw that, and instead of just like acknowledging that like I am upset that this person doesn't like this thing that I really enjoy, but I'm going to move on from it. Instead, you purposely tried to make me feel bad for making you upset. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
It's not my problem that you don't know how to deal with somebody showing that they're upset.
Yeah, and I hate this trope as a person who studied classics. I hate this trope that you have to be okay with themes of sexual assault or of like I don't know, just anything of that nature just because it's so baked into like Zeus is a chronic sexual assaulter. Like we've talked about this before. Um does not mean we're okay with it. We are acknowledging that that's the reality of the situation, right? And us doing that doesn't mean we absolve it of being shitty any of the times. You know, anytime we're gonna bring up a new story of Zeus, we're gonna be like, isn't it weird that he disguised himself as a swan to like yeah. You know, like we're gonna find ways to talk about it. Um it's all weird. It's all weird and stupid, and they're all selfish, and we are gonna call them out on it, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. And like, I will say one of those comments I saw that was like, I was like, I don't think you understand what you're saying right now. Is
Mhm.
someone that said like Percy Jackson has ruined how people see Greek mythology or something like that. And I was like, do you mean that Rick Riordan has been able to write like 20 some books about Greek mythology without like obscenely talking about rape or sexual assault in any of them? Like the fact that he doesn't shows that you don't have to. You can
Exactly.
still show that the gods are horrible. You can show that they do sexually assault people, that they cheat on their spouses, that they use people, that they do horrible things. All of the main gods in Percy Jackson, you know that they do that. You
Hmm.
know that Zeus does that. You know that Poseidon, like, there's a whole story about how Poseidon has like an actual wife, but he had Percy with Sally, who was 19 and had no family that he just like abandoned after she got pregnant. And so, like, you know that this is the kind of things that the gods do. It is not necessary for you to sit there and describe how they sexually assaulted people or how they raped people. Like, never once on the TV show do they ever say Medusa was raped by Poseidon, but everyone knows that's what happened. Even
Yeah.
the actors know that's what happened. And so you can talk about that without being gratuitous about it. And like Rick Riordan proves that there are other people who have written like adaptations since he started too that have done that. And so it's like you should be questioning when there is an adaptation when they add that stuff in, because there's all these other stories that show that without having to be like disgusting about it.
Hmm.
That is like people like become okay with just being like, well, like Greek mythology has all kinds of this stuff in it. It's like, yeah, it does. But why did he cut out all the other parts of that in this story except for this one thing at the end?
Yeah.
That's so
Why
weird
did
about
he
it.
save Odysseus from it, but he's adding it in for Penelope?
Especially because it would have made the story better. Like it would have made what how Odysseus reacts to certain things more understandable about why he like snaps the way that he did if he was like sexually assaulted by Cersei and then later on was sexually assaulted for all that time by Calypso. That would have made him much more empathetic, and you would have understood, even if he was still acting monstrous, you would have understood why he was acting that way, especially with him constantly talking about needing to get, even him needing to get home to his wife so badly would make sense if he went through something like that. He would want to like just go back home to where he felt like he was safer. That would have made him a much more empathetic character where you wouldn't have had to need him save his wife from rape at the end in order to make him a sympathetic like hero again. And so it's super weird that he cut out those parts earlier on that would have made the story better and then shoved it in at the end when it was not when it wasn't necessary, and just put your audience through something that you don't need to put them through in order to make the point that you're trying to make.
Hmm.
So that's a part of it that was so confusing. I was like, it would have been better if you did it earlier on to Odysseus. And so to me, it felt like you didn't want your male character to go through that, but you were fine with his wife going through it because you don't care as much about her. Like that sounds really harsh, but I don't know why else he would have done that.
I
And so
don't.
if he one day explains that, that would be super great. But I seriously doubt he's going to do a happy TikTok video explaining why he wrote in rape.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see if he
Hoping
ever,
that like somehow we're wrong and it's not as bad as we think it is, but
yeah,
it's not looking that way right now.
yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Um,
But to bring us on to the epic songs that we listened to for today, we might have split them up weird last time, but it made sense last time where we split them up with what was it called? The last song. I don't know if it was supposed to be included in this one where they off the sirens, but to me it made sense like keeping all of the siren stuff together because after three songs it skips forward to Telemachus. So what we start with is that the sirens, Odysseus had tricked them essentially so that he could get directions, figuring that sirens being mermaid-esque in this version would know the best path to avoid Poseidon. And so they tell him, through Scylla's lair. And this is not putting Scylla and Charybdis together, which I have some thoughts on. Scylla and Charybdis is famously supposed to be a choice. It's supposed to be rock in a hard place. And I think it's like a very interesting way to test captains. So Star Trek does something similar. I had to go on one of my Star Trek rants with this. But the captains get what's essentially a personality test while they're kind of getting their assignments, and it's called the Kobayashi Maru. And essentially it's the simulation where they're put, in the captaincy on deck. And while they're out in space, they get a call from one of the unfriendly races. They have a neutral zone. And if you go into the neutral zone, like it's fair game, you can get blasted by the enemy. So they get a call from this civilian fuel ship called the Kobayashi Maru, and it's a distress call. Their life support is going out, but they're stuck in the neutral zone. And so you have to decide, am I going to ignore what is essentially like a law between us and the Klingons and go into the neutral zone and risk like starting a war potentially even? Or do I try to save the ship, go in anyway? And like the simulation is set up in a way that you cannot win this. So if you're like, okay, let me try to see if I can get in contact with the Klingons and ask if I can go get them, they're not going to answer. If you wait, then it's a real ship and you have to hear their distress calls as they're losing life support. If you go in and you try to rescue them, it turns out that the ship was a trap and that the Klingons are ambushing you when you go in. And it's an insurmountable amount of ships that suddenly surround you and take out your crew. And so Scylla and Charybdis is supposed to be that type of choice. It's supposed to be like, am I risking a few crew members or am I risking my entire ship? Because on the one hand, Scylla is a six-headed monster and can literally only grab 6 people as you are sailing by. But Charybdis is a whole ass whirlpool and it will suck your ship in. Now, for brevity, I think they skipped because he goes by them again and Charybdis is more important the second time.
Mm-hmm. That Star Trek thing, or that reminded me of Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
That was vaguely familiar.
That was a really good show for some time, and of course what happens a lot the last season or so was just really weird. but that is honestly a really, really good show. But anyway, one of their first episodes, I think it was called like 18 minutes or something like that, but the basic thing about it is, the basic synopsis of that show is that there's like robots taking over the world sort of thing. And the people on these ships are like the humans that are left, and they're trying to find like Earth, and they don't know like where Earth is, but they're trying to find Earth and get back to Earth so they could like have their own planet again. And the robots are like really like well developed, where they look very similar to humans. Like you can't tell who is a robot and who isn't. So there's that whole thing going on for a long time of the show where they at some point reveal very dramatically like who is a robot undercover, and you're absolutely shocked about who it is. They do such a good, you don't even know that's what's happening until the scene starts happening. It's like such a good thing. But either way, in one of the early episodes, they had it was like the second episode, I think, and they had a whole thing where there was this ship that kept like attacking like the main ship with all of the like kind of military people on it. Like every like 18 minutes, it would just like show up and attack them again. And so none of the people on the ship had been able to sleep in like days, because like no matter what they did, no matter where they went, and like no matter what happened, the ship would always show up like 20 minutes later. And at some point during the episode, they figured out that the ship was like taken over obviously by the robot people, the Cylons, I'm pretty sure they're called, but they're like innocent people left on the ship. but they realized that like there's something with like the technology on that ship where they were just always able to like follow them, and that the only way to stop them was to like blow up the ship. And it was this moment of them having to decide whether to do that or not, because there were people on that ship that they knew. And it's like, what do I do? We can't go, like, they tried to go over there to try to, like, rescue some of them, but it would never work. They would always just, like, leave before they could get over there. And so nothing like that could work. So it was literally like, we either never get any sleep and the people on that ship keep, like, suffering in the hopes that they will stop, or we just make it stop now. And that's how the episode ends, with them just taking, like, the ship out because they just have to. But it's like that's sort of like a dynamic of, it's supposed to be a really difficult choice that doesn't have like a good answer. Like the Percy Jackson version of it, their ship literally blows up.
Yes.
When they get to the sea monsters, the ship blows up. Everyone thinks that like Tyson and Clarice and are dead. They're like miraculously not, but like everyone is messed up. Like Percy gets like passed out because he gets so hurt because he gets grabbed by Scylla on his like backpack and then just like flung in the air because he's able to like knock hit like one of the like hand basically that grabs him off of him. So it just like flings him like 200 feet into the air, and then he just like crashes into the water and passes out while the ship is blowing up. And so it's like this very epic thing because it's supposed to be really hard to go against them. There's no like right answer to it. Like there's nothing in that story that like Clarice could have really done to get away from either of them without something really bad happening because of just how scary they are. And so it is weird that he split them up in this way because it just makes them like easier in a way, like to get past, or like it almost makes at least for the Scylla song, it makes the decisions that Odysseus made, I think, even more like horrible because he wasn't so like stuck.
Yeah.
In the way that they are, the way that he would have been if the sea monster part was also there. And so it feels like worse to me that there was only one of them there and he still did the same thing that people do when both of them are there. And so I'm not really sure why he split them up. I'm sure there's interviews of him or TikTok videos that he's posted of Jorge explaining why he did. But it is kind of weird that he did that.
Yeah, my biggest guess, like I said earlier, is that Charybdis is more important on Odysseus's second time around that area. So I guess like for brevity's sake, he did it that way. But yeah, this version, because of that, Odysseus is knowingly choosing going into Scylla's lair, knowing Scylla is going to take 6 men, which is why we have Odysseus in this song telling Eurylochus, light 6 torches. And like as soon as he said that, I knew. I was like, oh shoot, he's like basically lighting a beacon to take these men. And I almost wish that there would have been more animation of him like going through and handing very specific people the torches, but that might make it too obvious to viewers.
Yeah.
I mean, because like the theme of the night with these 3 songs that we're talking about tonight is it better to save one life or many lives? Or, like few lives versus many lives. And Scylla's supposed to be the few lives choice, which is why it's more understandable when captains choose it, because I believe Odysseus does choose it in the Odyssey, but he chooses it over Charybdis. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the fact that he like had to in some way decide which one of them would die is just like atrocious. And I did like the part when Eurylochus like starts to realize what's going on. Yeah. And he's like, oh, you did this, you little fucker. And is just like so mad. But one thing I did wonder about it, I don't obviously I haven't watched a lot of like Greek mythology adaptations. I've watched some but not a ton. But is Scylla usually shown to be like a woman?
So, very late classical authors have this story where she was, I think it was for Apollo's hand. I forget. She was in a love triangle with Circe, and Circe turned her into a monster. And she was originally a nymph. But that's late authors. Scylla's described as female, I believe, in the Odyssey, but I always want to say that like she's more serpentine, and I'm not sure if that's just Renaissance art penetrating my brain. But I feel like depictions are usually more like six-headed water dragon type deal.
Hmm. Okay. I was just curious about that since he made her kind of look like Elvira for a second. Or
Yeah,
the animator at least did. Before they went into all the gruesome killing.
yeah,
Um
that was weird.
I will say that um it was just kind of like unbelievable how like his other men are standing there with like blood like all over them. There's like blood like splattered all over the deck.
Mhm.
And he's just sitting there being like, "Yeah, I came here even knowing that six of you would die, and I did that anyway because I want to see my wife again." And it was like, "Do you know that that doesn't make this any like?" I was just like, "Are you're unbelievable?" Like truly in a really bad way. That you're like, it's fine that I just killed six people because I love my wife. And I was just like, I don't want you to go back home. Like when I was watching this, I was like, do you deserve to see your wife again? Like, I don't want you to be by her. I think she should get a restraining order against you. Because if you're willing to do this, like to get back to her, that makes me scared about if she ever wanted to tell you no about something, honestly. Because you don't seem to be somebody who like listens to that when you want what you want. Because it's honestly completely insane that he's standing there on a deck with like his friend's blood splattered all over everybody. And he's like, "Well, I just wanted to see my wife again, so I decided to do this." And it's like, are you insane? Like certifiably, are have you actually lost your mind? Like, even though they have him like cry and get emotional and stuff, I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, you went here knowing that they were all gonna die, and that not only that, but the rest of them were gonna have to watch those people get slaughtered. And you just did it anyway because you like those people who died have family and stuff that want to see them one day.
Yeah.
They really wanted to get back home just as badly as you did. Like, you wanting what you want doesn't mean that you just get to do whatever you want. Like, you don't get to like just destroy people's lives to get your needs met. That is what abusers do. Hello, like stop doing that. But that's like what you're doing. He's putting all of what he wants first in a way that is like so like barbaric is the only way I know how to put it. Like lacking all kinds of like empathy in any way at all. He's not like conflicted necessarily that he has to do this. He just does it. And the only time that he really seems to feel bad is when his like first mate guy is like, "I'm gonna kill you now."
Yeah.
Like realizes because he can't pretend like he's a good person anymore. Because the people left on the ship have like realized how messed up he is. And I got like mad almost at the musical because in the next song, um, when the first mate guy like kills one of Apollo's cows, and that was the thing that got like Zeus mad at them. And I'm like, out of everything that's going on right now, it's him killing a cow because he's desperate for food. Because the guy in charge has just been like running a murder campaign and doesn't care if anyone gets any food. Like that's what damns them with Zeus is him killing Apollo's cow because he's desperate to eat and doesn't know what to do. after he just watched his friend kill 6 other people that he cared about. Like, that's just
Yeah.
mean that it's his fault.
Well, I mean, the Helios's cattle thing was supposed to be hubris on Eurylochus's part, and it is even in the original Odyssey. So the song we're talking about now is Mutiny, where because Eurylochus has this realization that Odysseus knew, that's why he said light 6 torches, he knew what he was getting us into. He starts a sword fight, and one of the guys even like runs his blade completely through Odysseus at one point, which I was like, okay. And he's supposed to live 7 more years. I don't think they have the surgical technology for that back then.
No. And he's just like walking around the boat with like blood coming out of his
Yeah.
back. And he's like, guys, we need to row. And I'm like, how are you not dead?
Yeah. So, I mean, I just like one line that stuck out to me too was Eurylochus saying, if you want all the power, you must carry all the blame. Which it seems like that's the thing Odysseus really doesn't get about his leadership is like, if you're going to make decisions, you have to carry the responsibility for them, which means you're going to have to answer your crew as to why you thought these 6 people weren't worth getting home.
Hmm. That's honestly the number one thing about leadership in general that people in leadership, especially if they're like toxic in any way, don't like is
Yeah.
the idea that like, yeah, it's all nice and fun and cool when you're the person in charge and everyone has to listen to you and you make the most money and yada yada yada. But it also means that when things are difficult, you're the one that is supposed to figure out what happens. Or if something goes wrong, you are the one that is responsible for it and you need to take responsibility for it. Like, I always remember way back in like 2011 when Obama was president and the Benghazi thing was a thing that was going on a lot in the news. It's basically one of our like stations in a different country was attacked by people in that country because we were probably bombing them. And it became like a big thing in the news because Republicans were like desperate for there to be something bad to say about Obama during his presidencies, and there wasn't as much to talk about when it came to him being like bad at his job necessarily in that way. And so they talked about that forever and ever and ever. And so he did an interview, or yeah, he did an interview, and then also did during like one of the debates for the election 2012. Like they said like, is this your fault? And he's like, I'm the president. Everything is my fault. And he's like, everything is my responsibility. I am president. Everything is my responsibility. It is me. Like, I'm the person doing this. This is my job. I'm responsible for literally everything. If something goes wrong, it is on me every single time. And like, just imagine other people that are in like politics right now saying anything that sounds like that. Just number one, no, they don't do that. That's why people still like look somewhat nicely on him, because he did say a lot of that stuff. Like, if something goes wrong, I'm not going to like pass the buck onto somebody else. It's my responsibility. And it is true. Like, Odysseus is the one in charge.
Yeah.
These are his men and his people. If he is going to make a sort of choice to let 6 of them be sacrificed so that he can have sex with his wife again, he has to then deal with the fallout of them getting upset when they find out. You're not going to be able to keep that a secret from people. And it's always interesting to me how many people in positions of power, whether it's like influencers online or whatever, they always get taken down by the fact that they're in a position of like authority in some way. And then they realize that that means that people go to them with like critiques, or that they're responsible for things that happen that they are somewhat privy to. And they're like, but I don't want to be responsible for this stuff because that makes me look bad. Or I don't like to think about how these decisions I made hurt other people that I didn't realize at the time. And it's like, that's literally part of this whole thing, is you have to think about that. You have to, like, usually I didn't delete any of those comments on that video today because I was trying to make a point later on, but usually I delete any comments that I think another survivor of any sort, or a kid who going through abuse or something, will see that will upset them.
Yeah.
Like whenever I have a video that gets more than like 500 views, I like obsessively watch the comments for that reason, because I want people who see my videos like that to feel like it's a place where they won't start scrolling through the comments and see something that's really upsetting or triggering to them. Like, I understand, even though I only have a couple thousand people who follow me, I understand that they do. And those are the kind of people that usually end up watching my videos more often than not, who like stick around, who have that kind of stuff going on. I know that I have a responsibility. They're here because of me. I want to make sure that I take care of them when they're in my space. I can't control what everyone is doing, but I can at least try to control what they see when people are being horrible like that. And so, like, I'm never going to be somebody who makes a video just to, like, rage bait someone or to just yell at somebody who says, like, a hurtful comment. Because it's like, if I post this right now, more people are going to see what this person said. And I don't want more people to see what they said. And so it's like, even with something small like that, it's like you have responsibility for what happens when people are around you and what they experience because of you. I would never want anyone who sees any of the things that we make to see something that makes them feel like they're being invalidated about anything that we talk about.
Yeah.
And so even with that, it's important. And Odysseus doesn't want to actually like own up to that. He wants to be able to do these horrible things to his men, have them like never fully find out about it, or like at least get away from having to deal with the responsibility of what he's done to them, while also getting what he wants and also having them listen to him. And it's like all of those things can never happen at the same time. Like,
Yeah. So
no.
Eurylochus, he starts this mutiny where he knocks Odysseus out, and they end up on an island. Odysseus quickly realizes, oh shoot, we're on the sun god's island. And they start talking about how there's an abundance of cows around, and like, hey, we're really, really hungry, so let's take out these cows. Now, I want to talk for a second about the actual Odyssey. And it's because Eurylochus's mutiny is a little bit more, I don't know, it's worse, but somehow better. Like, it's worse, but it makes it better in a way. So, Eurylochus, his mutiny in the actual Odyssey was having Odysseus stop at the Sun God's Island, because they had gotten the warning not only from Tiresias, which we skipped in this version, but from Circe, like, hey, just stay clear of that entire island. Don't go there. And so Eurylochus is like, okay, but we're really tired and we want to stop and eat. So can we like stop and eat? And so Odysseus says, yes, but we're going to eat the provisions that Circe packed for us. We're not going to go hunting. We're not going to approach any cattle, any sheep, any cows, nothing. We're not a thing. And Eurylochus is like, yeah, I swear, dude, we're not going to. Odysseus falls asleep while they're on this island, and that's when they betray him yet again, because they had already done that once with the winds, just like in this story. And Eurylochus convinces all of the crewmates to do this with him by saying, like, oh, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And, like, we can promise that we're going to build a temple for the sun god, like, when we finally make it back to Ithaca. And if we promise that, he can't be mad at us, right? And even if he is mad at us, like, whatever's in store for us on sea can't be any worse. So, maybe we should just eat. And the guys are like, a few of the guys anyway are like, yeah, I guess we should just eat, which is what prompts Zeus to then take out the rest of Odysseus's crew. Yeah, because Helios was mad. He was not happy with their offer of a temple later.
No. But I also can like at least understand why they were like that, because they were like, you know what? We just saw murder a lot. Could I just like have a cow?
Yes.
Can I just like
have a nice burger, a steak,
just, like, have a steak or something? Feel hungry after seeing like my friends get massacred.
Yeah.
It feels like that would be a good idea. And so at least with them in this story, it's like, well, we've been out here for so long, and Odysseus keeps doing stupid shit that makes our friends die, and so can I just like eat
Yeah,
something?
I'm not
I
gonna
also
listen
would
to
I
him.
also would not listen to him and just be like, you know what, I'm gonna go eat this fucking cow.
Yeah.
Like, you go do whatever it is you're doing, because it is true that it's also like a thing of like the god of the sea is like literally stalking us. Like, how much worse could this really
The
get?
literal sun stalking you. Like,
Like, let's just have every element just like stalking them while they're all out in the open on the ocean. Like, so like the water is trying to kill you, and now the sun itself is trying to kill you.
yeah,
um
which actually turned into the sky is trying to kill us because the sun just prayed to his dad.
yeah, I like the part where Odysseus was like, who do you think he's gonna send?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun to like see like their version of Zeus, to see what he's like. um and he
Well,
was,
it
you
goes to
know.
show that like he's broken the trust so much with his crew that even though he's correct here in saying like, "Hey, we shouldn't eat this cattle," they're not willing to listen to him anymore.
Yeah, like I wouldn't listen to somebody that was doing the stuff he was doing either. So it's like, why am I listening to you? You're not helpful. You're like keeping secret. Like, what? There's one of the lines in one of these songs where they're talking about how there's like secrets, and it's like there's always some fucking secret that he is keeping from them, and it's like at a certain point they just don't care anymore. They don't want to listen to you. They're going to do the little, you should have just like been like, oh yeah, eating this cow is fine. They probably would have not done it. Like like a teenager or something. But that's like, they probably would have more likely not done it if he would have acted like he was fine with it, because at this point I would like, knowing me especially, I would literally do everything that he says not to do, just because he says not to do it. I'd be like, you know what? No, you want me to go bring you water? I'm gonna like throw this water bottle at your forehead and not drink any water and die from dehydration. I would rather die from dehydration at this point than listen to you, even if you're telling me to like drink water so I don't pass out. Because it's like, listen to you, even if you're telling me to like drink water so I don't pass out. Because it's like, I don't want to listen to you anymore.
Yeah.
I've just I like all of our men keep being murdered, and it's because of things that you're doing. I don't trust you anymore. I don't want to listen to you anymore. Um and either way, like Zeus gets to pop up and be like, you know what? Hi guys.
Yeah, and he's like, "You want to be awful? Let me make you all the way awful." So, like the next song, "Thunderbringer," is this Zeus appearance, which like Zeus in this version is giving slimy energy. Because there's the talk about like maidens and how all of the little like cloud formations and lightning formations turn into women and stuff. It's giving slime ball. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it fits for Zeus, which is interesting. Um, let's see. So Zeus gives Odysseus the choice, like pretty right off the bat, says, "You know what? I'm going to make you choose now. Do you want to survive or do you want your crew to survive? It has to be one or the other. Somebody's going to die today. So is it you or is it them?" And like it's interesting because they literally just stabbed him. Like I mean, I don't necessarily blame him for his choice, especially because the whole reason Zeus is after them now at this point is because they did the whole thing with the sun cattle. Like, y'all got yourself into that mess, and I tried to warn you. You know, I probably would not feel super terrible making the same choice in that situation. But yeah, he says he wants to see Penelope again, and all of the men kind of storm him before Zeus actually takes them out, except for Eurylochus. Eurylochus is just kind of standing there dumbfounded, of like I'm not surprised, but damn, bro.
Yeah. Like, even if you're not surprised, that is such a betrayal anyway, to literally to their face be like, you can all die.
Yeah.
I can live because I'm that special.
Yeah.
Uh, the part when like Zeus turns into his wife, that was I'm like laughing because that's such a bitch move of
Yeah.
Zeus to be like, oh, do you miss your wife? Do you want to see your wife? Remember what she looks like? Like that's such a Zeus thing to do, to just like mock him about what his wife looks like, while he's trying to decide whether he should kill all of his friends, the remaining people that are left or not. And I'm just like, that's kind of funny how he does that. And one the thing that I thought was interesting when I was listening to this song was a lot of the comments on the YouTube video that pop up as you're watching it. The top comments were all like people talking about how sad they were when like Odysseus was like looking at like the Zeus version of his wife, and how he was like saying like I need to see my wife again, so he told Zeus to kill all of his crew and stuff, and how sad it was that his wife wasn't really there and that he still was like far from blah, 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 blah. Like just talking about how it was supposed to be like this like sad moment where you're supposed to be rooting for Odysseus still, and I'm like, I kind of don't want you to go home.
Yeah.
I don't want you to go home. Like I don't want you to see your wife and son again. I think that you should be in prison. And I'm like a prison abolitionist, but at this point I'm like, you're literally murdering multiple people that you knew. Like, we've done, like, I'm counting in my head, we've done like 6.5 hours of podcast just on Luke being a groomer who puts his priorities over literally everyone else and murders people that idolize him and look up to him. He's literally doing the exact same thing. Like
Yeah.
Odysseus is doing the exact same thing. He knows all of these men. He probably knows like their families, their friends, the people that they want to go home to. He knows who they want to see again one day. He's the reason why they're even here in the first place. And he's still just sitting there being like, "Oh, but I want to see my wife again." And it's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like it's the exact same sort of thing of Luke killing these kids that idolize him and look up to him and care about him, and not caring that he's destroying their lives. And even the people that join him, he's destroying those people's lives too, because he doesn't care, because he wants to get what he wants. And I'm like, I should not be comparing Odysseus, the hero of the Odyssey, to Luke, who is a serial killer.
Yeah.
I was like, how did I get here? I really liked Odysseus. Like, part of the reason why I like the Odyssey, and I think the reason why the 1997 miniseries movie that I watched in school, that is like, for whatever reason, like burned into my brain somehow,
Yeah.
where I remember a lot of the Odyssey from that. As I remember when we were in school and we were reading the Odyssey, that I really liked Odysseus because he was going through really difficult things, and he was like he openly was struggling a lot with
Mm-hmm.
the decisions that he had to make, and not liking anything that he had to do, and not wanting to do anything he was having to do, but was like really upset about the things that other people were like forcing him to do. And it was a really like difficult thing for him to try to figure out how to navigate having to make these sort of choices without losing his like sense of self and like who he was as a person. And I do remember through the years that some people would like complain about Odysseus because they felt like he was almost like whining too much or something in the stories.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I really liked him, was because he talked about that, because that is how hard that kind of stuff is. When
Yeah.
you're in like a completely impossible situation, like that was my entire life at that, especially when I read these stories in school. And so I really liked reading somebody that was in as difficult as a place as I was, and knew that there was like no good choice and there was no good way to handle this stuff, and you just tried to do the best you could.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like really lacking in this version, that's making me not like him so much. Like ignore the fact that I just like bitched about Jorge for like 45 minutes earlier during this. That's honestly not a part of it. A part of this, it's like part of why that happened is because I feel like a lot of what I really like about this character from the original stories is missing, and it's making me sad.
Yeah.
Because that was my favorite. That's my favorite thing about the Odyssey, and that's like since we're Percy Jackson podcast, that's what Percy is like. Is
Mhm.
like that's why I like him a lot too. Is that he's going through all these really difficult things. People are trying to get him to make decisions that aren't aligned with who he is as a person, and he struggles against them the entire time, which makes him not have to do certain things. And there are a lot of times when Percy could just like, you know, rage out and not care about what happens to the other people around him to get what he wants, but he never does that. Like in Titan's Curse that we just read, he wants to save Annabeth, yes, but
Mhm.
he's not willing to save her if it means that everyone else on the quest is like in danger, or everyone else on the quest isn't willing to kind of go along with him once he joins the quest against their will. But still, like once he's there, he's not sitting there being like, I don't care what the rest of you want to do, I'm going to go save Annabeth whether you want me to or not. It's like, no, he's with them, he wants to help them. He doesn't do that kind of thing. Like, he would never do this sort of a thing. Even if he was getting what he wanted, he would never be willing to sacrifice the people on the quest if it meant that, even if it meant that Annabeth was saved from Luke sooner.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's what Odysseus is supposed to be like. And is part of the thing with these like Greek mythology adaptations is that all kinds of people are adapting them who have different ideas of these characters. And like I will say that on one of the videos that I made that I also privated because people were just going over to that other one to yell at me some more. Um, One of the comments on there that was nice said that Jorge had never even read the Odyssey. And I don't know if that's true. I know that he said that he started uh, writing the musical when he was in college, and I didn't look into anything else about him because I didn't want when I'm first watching something or whatever, I don't really look into anything about it until I finish it, and if I like it a lot, then I'll start like learning everything in the world about it. But until I know if I like it or not, I usually don't do that stuff, and so I don't know anything about him besides that he started writing it in college, and so I honestly don't know
Mhm.
if he read the Odyssey. But I will say that if he didn't, that makes this musical make more sense
Yeah.
because if you haven't read the Odyssey, it makes sense why he's like messing up the characterization because he's kind of making Odysseus more like modern day like anti-heroes. You know,
Yeah. It's
like
weird.
like the Punisher or something is like how they're kind of depicting him of like I'm so tough and grisly and I will do whatever it takes to get back to my woman sort of thing. And that's not really like, yeah, Odysseus wants to go back home the entire time and that's like his driving force through all these years, but it's not like a thing of like I want to go back to like see my woman in that in like a more simplistic way that it is being depicted in this. It's
Mhm.
more like I want to go back home because I realized that I shouldn't have ever I didn't want to ever join this war in the first place. I'm not somebody that likes being a soldier. I don't like having to fight and be in battles. And
Mhm.
so I want to go back home now that I'm because I want to be done with that. And
Yeah.
that's like more of why he keeps talking about like I just want to see my wife and kid because he wants to go back to his life where he doesn't have to do these things because he's never wanted to be like a hero like this. Um, People, the gods and other people like forced him to do this stuff. But he doesn't. That's not his thing. He doesn't want to be known as like this big hero. Um, and at least the original Odysseus is like that, which also always reminds me of Percy because Percy doesn't want that either. He doesn't want to be like known. He just is. But he doesn't want that. He's not doing that for like attention or anything. He would rather people just leave him alone
Yeah.
in the same sort of way. And so it is just weird to see this stuff missing from this story. If you don't know that much about Greek mythology, you can probably just enjoy it for what it is. But I feel like if you really like the Odyssey at all, I feel like this musical is like harder to really fully enjoy. Um, just because some of the things that people usually like about it is missing.
Yeah, well, I have a real soft spot for Penelope to kind of circle back to that topic from earlier because like I literally put lines from the Odyssey in my wedding ceremony. I wrote my own wedding ceremony. I put it's something that Odysseus says to Princess Nausicaa, which I don't know if they'll include her in the story at all, but like most of the Odyssey is Odysseus telling what happened to himself to her and her family. So like but to Princess Nausicaa, what he tells her is like, I want for you a marriage where you are alike in mind and in spirit, and that's how your house will have harmony. And the reason he is saying that is because that is him and Penelope. Like they are like in spirit and in mind, and like so taking that aspect away from Penelope, making her this weird siren call of he just has to get home to her no matter what, that she's gonna accept him no matter what, because believe me, there are things that my husband could do and come home to me and I'd be like, yeah, fucking leave. You're not coming back. That is it, you know? Like there's lines.
Yeah, there should be in any sort of relationship, really.
Yeah.
No matter how much you love each other, it's like there can't be, it can never be this sort of a thing. I just like can never get over the fact that it just feels like such a toxic masculinity story.
Mhm.
Like the idea that like a man is out there being big, strong, and tough, and like killing people all to get back to his woman and his son, but mostly his woman. Like he never really mentions his son after a certain point, and it's more about his wife. And it's just like this very toxic idea of him like fighting the world and fighting all these things to get back to his wife that is like this poor defensive creature that he has to rescue once does get back home and can't handle anything on her own and can't be her own person. Like there's never a question in this that she would like accept him back. It's just literally about him just like getting there.
Mhm.
And that's just like not how real relationships work. Like any relationship, even like friendship or something, or
Yeah.
any relationship at all, like it doesn't work like that. You have to like respect each other and respect them enough to know like it's such a trope for like hero type characters, but it is like a very real trope. The idea of like I could never do this because they would never forgive me if I did this because of them. And
Mhm.
like I can't think of an example right now, but that's a general like trope that happens, and it's true because that's true. That's how you like people feel when you have that sort of like bond with anyone, is like you don't want to, you're never going to do something to, even if it's to get back to them or to help them or get something for them, if you know that they would be really upset with you if they found out, because they would never want you to go out and do those things like on
Mhm.
behalf of you or
Oh, I know an
whatever.
example of that. Lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Michael in Lost takes out Anna Lucia and I forgot what the therapist's name was. Libby. He takes out those two women in season two. He eventually gets his son off the island, but he somehow, for whatever reason, tells his child son, "Hey, I killed two people to get us off this island." And his son's like, "I don't ever want to speak to you again. I'm gonna go live with grandma."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that sort of a thing. Like I don't want um yeah, like I don't want that. Like I think of like my own family stuff. Like I don't want, like I've told like since my mom and I have started talking again, I've told her like I don't I don't want to tell her things that are like too much for her to hear just because I could. Like that's not a nice thing to do. Like I don't want to do that to her. That's not helpful at all. That's not good for her. That's not good for me. Like I don't want to say things to her that would just really hurt her just for the sake of doing it. The only stuff I bring up like that are things that I feel like would be good for her to hear because of something we're talking about.
Hmm.
That's the only time that I ever, or if I accidentally say something because I don't realize that she doesn't know about it. That happens, and she does that with me sometimes accidentally. It happens. Anyway, but it's the same kind of idea of like I don't want to do that to her, and she doesn't want to do that to me either. Like my mom threw out, my mom threw out like almost every picture she had of my dad.
Hmm.
Like I went over to her house and she had this big, like one of those big plastic storage units, like big, full of pictures from like the pictures that she still has from our childhood and life in general. And I went over to her house to watch like the original trilogy of Star Wars with her, and in between the movies we would take breaks and I would just go through that like box and start looking at photos in there and taking some pictures of me because I have like no pictures of myself for most of my life. And I found when I was looking through that gigantic box, I found like 5 pictures of my dad in that entire box. Like it was a huge box that covered like my entire life up until just a couple years ago when I stopped talking to her. And I found 5 pictures of him, and it was ones that she had because my sister, I guess, asked for like pictures of him with her, and so she like took some out and was apologizing to me for having them, and I
Yeah.
was like, you don't need to apologize to me. He existed. I know that he was there. You don't have to apologize to me that there's still like evidence that he was around. But she got rid of like literally every other picture of him. She cut off his head, and some of them, like when
I love
after I
that for
told her
her though.
what he did, and it just always makes me laugh that there's like a garbage bag somewhere with my dad's disembodied heads in them, and I hope that somebody found them and wondered what my mom was doing.
Oh my
but
god.
but it's like that's the kind of thing that I think about of how that stuff happens. Like my mom got rid of all these photos of my dad when she found out what he was doing to me because she didn't want me to see him anymore. And she was also like disgusted about finding out like the length of what he was actually doing and things like that, that she didn't want to look at him anymore. And
Yeah.
so she got rid of almost everything of him. It wasn't because I told her to and it or anything like that. She just was like trying to do that because I wasn't even talking to her when she did that. And so like she just did that because that's what she wanted to do. In the same way that I like got rid of a lot of photos of him too, but also like wasn't going around like trying to make the entire world hate my mom when we weren't talking because I knew that that wouldn't help anything. It's like that sort of an idea, I guess, with like this sort of relationship of like you love that person, and if you respect them you don't want to do something that will make them upset, like hurt them, especially if they're like the reason for it, because they're going to feel really bad about that all the time. And so that's basically what is missing with like Odysseus and his wife in this version of the Odyssey, is like he's just doing all of these crazy things for his wife and doesn't seem to be thinking about what his wife would think about all the things that he's doing, because if he did he wouldn't do any of them.
Yeah.
And it just like it doesn't feel like a real relationship, I guess. I guess that's the best way to put it. It feels like 2D to be like a real adult relationship.
Yeah, because he's like, by the time we're going to be done with this, he's going to have been away from her for nearly 20 years. I mean, it's 17, but that's practically 20.
Mm-hmm.
Their child would have grown from an infant to a literal adult. Like, that's a lot of life that they like missed of each other.
What
Yeah.
was I gonna say? I was gonna say it reminds me of the end of Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
After they've been gone on their crazy death defying quest, they come back, and the big part about that story at the end is that like everything is different. Like they are different. Like
Hmm.
they come home and they feel very different from everyone else in the Shire because they went through all of these traumatic, horrible things that nobody else went through. And so they just feel different from everybody. Like, even though Sam gets married and has kids and things like that, and I think Pippin and Mary do too, they still feel just like separated from everyone
Hmm.
because they were gone for a really long time and they went through these experiences that nobody else did. And it like takes time for them to like transition back to being around like normal people after going through such like an abnormal experience. And then when like Frodo leaves because he's so different after dealing with the ring that he just like feels like he needs to leave. But part of like Lord of the Rings, like lore, I suppose is the best word for it, is that when Sam dies, he goes with and goes to like where Frodo is. And
Hmm.
that's kind of like the whole thing is that they're saying goodbye in that moment for now, and it still like makes you cry a lot, especially if you're me. It makes me cry a lot every single time they say goodbye because it's so wrong
Yeah.
that Frodo and Sam are separated at all. But it also is a thing within the story that it's not their goodbye forever. That when Sam dies, he goes where Frodo is and spends the rest of like eternity with him, and with like his wife and his kids and stuff eventually go there too once they die. But it's like he's always going to come back to him in some way, and it's that idea of like if Odysseus came back after doing all of this stuff, it would take a long time for him to even like get used to being a normal person again, or like just like be around his wife again, for his wife to even know who he is anymore.
Hmm.
And for his kid has no idea who he is. He's just like a mystery person that he's just like heard about, but he has no idea who his dad actually is. And so like if you dealt with this story in like a realistic way when it comes to like relationships and like emotions, like we get that it's like a magical story with like Greek gods and things, but the relationships in these sort of stories is what always grounds them. um but I feel like that's what's missing in this adaptation, that it doesn't feel real like that. Like it just doesn't, because the way that he talks about it is if like oh, I'm just going to get back to Ithaca and then everything is going to be fine. And like granted, the next saga in Ithaca will come out like tomorrow. And so we'll see if that's like how they depict it, but it's also like a thing of if the Ithaca saga really is like the last one, which it seems like it will be, the very last saga, then it has to be fine when it ends, when he gets back home, because everything about this whole thing has been about him going home to see his wife again. And
Yeah.
so I can't see them ending this musical with him like standing there being like, I don't know who my wife is anymore. I turned her into a fantasy all of these years in order to get myself to keep going when everything was so difficult. And now she's a real person. What do I do? And so I feel like that's not what they're going to do, because they present her as a fantasy in like a good way,
Hmm.
not in like a way where he's being unhealthy, because like his men are presented as being like the problem when they get upset with him.
Hmm.
And so you're not supposed to be like on their side. Like I am, but we're not supposed to when we're listening to these songs. Like I know that I'm like feeling differently about things than how the narrative of the thing is wanting me to feel. Um, but yeah, because of that, I don't think that the musical is even seeing it as a problem that he does all this stuff for his wife. I feel like this is like, it reminds me of like all the corny action movies from like the 90s and like 2000s that I love. I still
Hmm.
love them, but they are very corny action movies of like big muscly men that are like, I need to get back to my woman. Let me become a murderer for a couple hours, and then I can go back to my woman and like kiss my baby newborn son on the forehead. And like I'm remembering a movie, but I can't remember what movie it is, where there's like a grisly like like James Bondish like killer that nobody can ever catch, and then he goes back home and he has like a wife and a baby, and you're like, what? but but that's what I feel like we're watching, and that's really weird because that's not what I expected.
Yeah, that wasn't the story we signed up for.
No. I did want to mention before I forget, since talking about movie adaptations, that I got a comment about this today, and I had no idea what the person was talking about, but they were talking about the Christopher Nolan movie because somebody said something about how, oh, you might like Tom Holland's next movie, and I was like, what? And I just like kept going because there's so many of them that I like didn't stop to think about that one. But Christopher Nolan's coming out with an Odyssey adaptation in 2026 with a very Christopher Nolan cast.
Weird eclectic cast like Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya and
Yeah, like
Matt
Tom
Damon.
Holland, Matt Damon. What Matt Damon?
What was Matt Damon doing on that list?
Can
Yeah.
Matt Damon be like Scylla and like the other and the sea monster or something? He always has the most random like cameos in movies for the longest time. Like he was Scotty in like Scotty Doesn't Know in Eurotrip, or he was singing Scotty Doesn't Know in Eurotrip. And I remember at the time, when I was like a senior in high school when that movie came out, me and my friends watching it and me looking and and we were like, is that Matt Damon? Like, why is he in this movie? Because at that time you only knew Matt Damon as like winning the Oscar for like Good Will Hunting and stuff.
Yeah.
We're like, what is going on? Like, anyway, Christopher Nolan is weird. Like, I don't know how to. He is such a film bro. Like because he's one of the people that during COVID went on like these like very privileged rants about how like cinema can only be done if you see movies in the cinema, and like the art form of the cinema is being lost because you don't want to go to a movie and contract a disease that might kill you.
Oh god.
And he was like, my art has to be seen in the movies. Like there's some movie of his that came out during COVID that he put out during COVID and like nobody saw it because it came out during COVID, and also because he was being such a privileged little like jerk by saying all that stuff that it's like, well, now I really don't want to see your movie because you're being so like pedantic and weird about it. I just picture him like in a house, like sitting in like a dark room, like sitting like this and like thinking about cinema. And like, oh, because that's just what he's so pretentious. Oh my god. And so he always has like the same actors. His female characters are always killed, and like the male characters are always like doing things to try to get back to them, or they're always there as like a prop for like the male characters character development. Like there's some of his movies that I do enjoy. Like I love Inception. Inception's one of my favorite movies. I used to watch it 47 million times because it's just fun. It's just a fascinating sort of concept to go into people's dreams and try to change what they're dreaming about, sort of thing, to find information. But like Leonardo DiCaprio's character, his wife in that movie is dead, and like her role is literally just there to like give him character development. Like she doesn't have her own story. It's very similar to the Odyssey at the end of that movie, where the end of the movie is him in like a house back with his wife, back with the wife that he's been dreaming about and stuff. And you're not and like the last scene of the movie is like this thing where you're not sure if it's a dream or if it's real, and they never answer it, and they never should. But you wonder, like, is this real? Like, was he able to get back home and fix things with her? Or is this a dream and he's just dreaming about a time that he could see her again? But either way, like the entire story is about him dreaming about how he fucked everything up with his wife. But his wife doesn't have like her own personality. She's literally just like an avatar for his angst. And so like that's a lot of what female characters are like in Christopher Nolan movies. They usually don't have that much of like their own story outside of like the men they're kind of like attached to. And I'm not sure about that with the Odyssey, because with Penelope at least. And it's honestly kind of terrifying to imagine somebody like that depicting Calypso. Because I feel like he would depict her as like this amazing, beautiful woman who you just like can't help but love, and that there's nothing wrong with the fact that she is trying to trap you to stay on her island all these years and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's happening. it will be interesting to see, like, because it's a Christopher Nolan movie and he's fucking obsessed with never telling anyone anything. Like, we're not going to find out about like who's even playing who until like 10 minutes before the movie comes out. Even his trailers don't like give anything away. They're always like super dramatic music and like shots of people, but you still have no idea what they're doing or who they are or anything. And then the other thing, like Greek mythology related, I wanted to remember to bring up is that we brought it up. I brought it up before that Madeline Miller's next book is about Hades and Persephone. And at the time, I was like, "Oh God! Like, I hope that it's the good version of Persephone, where Hades isn't like abusing her. That's our version of the good version of Persephone. Just to be clear about that." Um, and then I like Googled it one day, and I saw this blog post that she made in like 2011, where she was talking about how Demeter was a controlling mom,
Ooh,
and
I love it.
Hades saved her from Persephone. And I was like, yes, we are winning. That book is coming out next year, and anyone who doesn't agree with that is going to be so mad because Madeline Miller is such a good author that you cannot deny that she knows what she's doing. With the story, with that sort of story. And so it makes me really glad that she's the one writing something like that. I did want to say that I saw a video about this the other day, but I didn't really know what it was. But a friend of mine was telling me that there's like two other kind of Greek mythology musical things where people are making them like on TikTok right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see a video of somebody who was writing one of them, but I just didn't want to like stop to figure out what was happening. I always just figure when things like that are going on that if it gets to a certain point, I'll like hear about it when something is like, more completed. But the friend of mine did say that it's like a Hades, like one of them is supposed to be like a musical about Hades, like being nicer to Hades. And that one involves Persephone, but it's also like you don't know what that really means.
Yeah.
Like, when it comes to this stuff, they could do anything. Like, we're very like scarred from just being on here and hearing people hate the ideas that we have about the myths that we feel the most connected to. So whenever somebody says they're doing a story about Medusa, I am terrified. Like, I never even tried to watch that show Chaos that was on Netflix because Medusa was on the cast list, and I was terrified about how they would depict her. And then she ended up not having that big of a role anyway. But still, I never even tried watching the show because I was terrified that they would somehow do it wrong, and then I would cry. And it's the same sort of thing with you and Persephone. Like, I get so scared whenever somebody handles that stuff. Like, I want them to because I love those characters and their stories and stuff. And it is such an amazing thing when they do get it the right way. But it's also really sad when they don't.
Yeah.
So the friend of mine was like, those other musicals are happening, but you might want to avoid them because I'm really not sure how those are going to go either. I like they seem kind of weird, and I'm not sure that we should really like. It's kind of like a weird thing of I like the idea of people making art like that online, and like people just doing it. I like that general idea because that's all that we do. I think it's generally a good idea, especially when Hollywood is so stupid right now, where they're just like remaking the same things over and over and over and over again, and there's no real creativity really. Like Percy Jackson is living on his own little special island, but outside of them, there's an extreme lack of like real like artistry, creativity, all those sort of words you would use for any form of art in Hollywood right now. They're just like remaking old movies or remaking animated movies into live action movies or remaking movies that used to be good in like 2002 and remaking them again or remaking Harry Potter and just
Yeah.
like endless. And so I do think it's a good idea for people to start making their own stuff because that's likely where these things are going to go in the next 20 years or so, to be like an Aquarius person. Well, Pluto is an Aquarius. Likely the next 20 years, we're going to get away from studios controlling absolutely everything again and going back to like people just making things more independently and being able to like be creative in like a real way again. But also, it does mean that when you don't have like a studio or even anyone at all being there to kind of give you critique and like analysis and things like that for what you're writing, it does mean that sometimes people can make things that are hurtful to people and not things that are hurtful to people and not. Sorry, you were like stuck for a couple seconds. But what I was saying was they can sometimes when you don't have people like looking at the stuff that you're making, you can write things that are hurtful to people in some way and you don't even realize that you did. And then if it becomes like kind of what's happening right now with Epic, like if it becomes big enough and you have like enough fans, if people start critiquing you at this point, people are just gonna like try to silence you. Um, and like I feel like if Jorge and stuff had somebody else that he was writing some of this stuff with, or just somebody to like critique a lot of this stuff, or like I don't want to be stereotypical, but I'm just going to say it anyway, like a woman that was involved in this stuff just as much as he was, some of the issues that has come up probably would have been avoided. And so it's like a balance of making your own art, doing your own thing, but also letting people who you trust, like showing it to them, um, so that you can make sure that it's as good as you want it to be.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way to do it. Like, like we show each other stuff we make, and I don't just say that it's good if I'm lying. I don't lie. Um, I tell you that something's good if I think that it's good, and if it's not, I don't lie about that, and you don't do that either. That's a really good way of doing it because I don't like it's good to have somebody like that you can just like bounce ideas off of, even so that it's not just you going out there being an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like somebody else to like kind of talk things out with. That's always very helpful. But there are those there I'm sure there's other Greek mythology things happening because there's just so many of them happening right now. If you ever hear about a Medusa adaptation, tell me about it if it's um, good. And if it's not, or if you think that the good version of Medusa is the one that was not a rape survivor, don't talk to me because I've seen like too many. Ugh. I just always remember that the videos that I saw from someone um, when I first got on TikTok before I even knew you, that was people saying like oh, rape survivors aren't allowed to like Medusa because that myth isn't real. And I was like, are you like serious? Like right now? And then I went to like read their comments and I realized that they were serious. And I was like, why? Like why would you want to stop, like why would you make a video telling rape survivors that they can get a Medusa tattoo if they want, but it doesn't mean anything because the myth it's based on isn't real? Like why do you feel the need to do that to people? And people started arguing with me so much that I just like deleted my comments from those videos. And after that, I was just like so upset about the fact that that's even a thing that people do, that they want to like take something away because of their own problems. I don't know how else to put that.
Weird mythology hangups. It's so stupid.
Yeah. And I forever always think it's funny that we're the personification of the biggest ones. And I'm like, I will shove this down your throat. Like I will like post about the Medusa episode of Percy Jackson until I die. And like because that is honestly one of the best adaptations of her. Like I rewatched that video that I made of just me like showing the scene of when she says like the gift the gods gave me is that I cannot be bullied anymore, I will just watch that with Percy asking her, like, are you a monster? And her saying, like, no, a survivor, and that whole conversation. I will watch it sometimes for like 10 minutes on a loop because I just love how they're talking about her so much, about someone who's been through what she went through. And how Percy is talking to her was just like respect. Like he's just talking to her like a normal person. He's not like being weird or judging her or questioning her story. Like Annabeth is in the corner yelling, but she's seen as like the person that's in the wrong during that entire episode mostly. So it's like that's the correct way to see that. And so yeah, I'm never going to stop talking about the right way to do Medusa, which is like that. And if the Madeline Miller book really is as good as we think it is, we will be unsufferable.
Yes, exactly.
Considering how much shit people who are like up their own ass about classics has been to both of us about those things, that's just karma, dude. For Madeline Miller to write a book like that, where you have to deal with it. You can't say that it's badly written. You can't say that it's a bad adaptation. You can't say that she doesn't know anything about Greek mythology because she already wrote Circe and the Song of Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are such loved books. You can't play those games with her. You can't act like she's not educated about what she's talking about the way that they do with other adaptations that they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like no way to deal with it. So you just have to deal with the fact that some people look at Persephone and see her mom as a really controlling mom. And there's nothing that's part of the story. And especially if you like Percy Jackson, you should never really question that too much because all of the gods are seen as as bad and like controlling and abusive and stuff. So Demeter definitely, she's not a good parent in the stories either to like the kids that are her kids. So it's like that's consistent with all of them all the time. If you have a lot of power that's completely unchecked, you're going to be kind of a mess. Which is essentially what the gods are, and that's how they always, to me, that's how they should kind of always be depicted. I will say the thing about Epic that I think is so funny is that my favorite thing of about it is just Poseidon.
Mm-hmm.
How angry he is. Like when I was watching these songs, I was like, can Poseidon come back?
Yep.
Can Poseidon come back and yell at him? Like I know there's a song called Get in the Water, and I'm like, can that be Poseidon just like fucking him up? Like I don't even know if that's what that song is. But I just want it because I just want Poseidon to do that. And I'm like, this is not what I'm supposed to be feeling.
Yeah.
But this is like the thing that I enjoy the most about this musical is Poseidon just like wreaking havoc.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of at the end of our time, but since it's about to be another holiday, another quick pep talk for everybody that's going to have to deal with their family. Your phone is a friend, so you can comment, message us, all of that stuff. Hang in there. Remember, you don't have to participate in every single conversation. That's going to be hard this next couple days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of topics that are going on right now that are like very heated, like not only with like the election stuff and president next year, but also like Luigi.
Yeah.
And so no matter what it is, even if you start saying things you don't actually believe, that's fine. If like your parents are making you go to somebody's house that you don't really want to go to, if you want to say that stuff just to like avoid a big family argument, then just go do that, or just like go hide in the basement like I used to.
Yeah, go find a pet and like yeah, that was my strategy. I was always the like I'm gonna go hang out with the dog person.
In like the 90s, the original trilogy of Star Wars used to play on repeat on like Christmas before it came out again. And so I used to just go into a random room in whatever house I was in that had, because my dad's family always had like so many rooms with so many TVs. And I would just go into like the basement or something and turn it on and just sit there and watch Star Wars or like a Christmas. Like there was one year that me and my cousins kept watching A Christmas Story.
Oh yeah, because they
And
play
to see
it.
like how many times we could watch it in one day, and that we kept, and it became like a joke where every time our parents forced us to go downstairs, we would always come back at the same place in the movie. So we saw like the same parts of the movie like 5 times and like nothing else. um, but like that kind of a stuff is fine. Like if you want to like if you live in a place where it's not that cold and you want to like go outside to escape for a couple minutes and come back in, it's fine. And if people ask you where you are, you don't have to explain. You can just say like, "Oh, I just needed some air," or "I was just outside," or whatever. Or you can do the like very autistic thing where you like go to the bathroom for 20 minutes and just like sit in the bathroom with the lights off for 20 minutes and hope that with like your phone out and hope that nobody can find you in there while you like just have a timeout zone from all of the sensory activity. So that's also when I used to do that. I used to like go, that's part of why I would go into like an empty room. I would just go into an empty room with and like not turn the lights on purpose and just like sit in there to like try to get away from so much noise and people talking and so many social norms and cues that I was supposed to pick up on, and I couldn't pick up on any of them. And so that's always something that you could do too, to try to find something like that to avoid some of that stuff and give yourself breaks. Because I feel like even when things are okay with your family, that kind of stuff can happen where you're just overwhelmed by all of the conversations and activities and how to respond to like your great grandmother giving you a really weird gift and not knowing how to like react to it. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the my family stuff has always been especially super weird, but especially since my dad's family cut him off when I was like 16. Ever since then, our like family stuff has just been like my parents and my sister.
Yeah.
And so I don't do like the big family stuff ever, like for Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's just my mom, her boyfriend guy, my sister and hers, and me, and my niece.
Hmm.
That's it. There's no like extended family. We don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about ever seeing anybody. Granted, the reason why I don't is because I was so like isolated from all those people growing up because of my dad that we haven't talked to them for so long that we don't want to deal with it anymore. But it also just is like that's how I would rather have it be at this point.
Yeah.
And so I guess I just there it is possible for I just want to say for like teenagers, if you're in a family where there's like 40 billion people, like uh, one funny story with my sister is the first year when she started dating her boyfriend, he has like a big family. Like he's gone to funerals before and he doesn't even know how he's related to the person at the funeral because he has so many like cousins and extended family and stuff. And so the first time she ever went to his family's Christmas, she texted me when she was hiding in the bathroom because there were so many people in one place all talking at the same time that she was overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. Because our Christmas is literally like 5 people. Like on Christmas, I'm going to go over to my sister's house and we're going to be there the entire day. We're going to open up presents and like eat food and like watch football, but it's just going to be us sitting there on the couch and then playing with my 1.5-year-old niece. That's all we're going to do that entire day. And so her going to his family the first time, she was so like overstimulated and like overwhelmed by being in one room with so many people because we had never done that. And like we stopped going to family things like that when she was like 13. And so she's never dealt with that. She had no idea what to do and literally was hiding in the bathroom like being like, how do I handle this? And I was telling her how to like do breathing exercises so like, she could like calm back down and go back out and like talk to everybody. So I did want to say that like as you get older, you have like more of a choice of how you want to celebrate things. And if you don't want to go to the big family get-togethers, you don't have to go anymore. And
Yeah.
so there is like at one point there is an end date to all of that stuff, even if it doesn't feel like it there is one right now.
Yeah. So just survive. Do what you have to survive. We'll be here again the day before New Year's Eve. And I don't know, part of me is like, how do we wrap up a year? I don't know. My brain's
Okay,
thinking tier list
I
or something.
I had this idea that like Isa helps me come up with like every idea. She just says things and they just like make ideas pop in my head and I'm like, "Oh, that would be a good idea." And so the other day when I posted about how our Sea of Monsters video is like one of our most watched videos because people hate that movie so much that every month like 10 more hours of people watch that video and it just always makes me laugh whenever I see it like move up suddenly. Um I was like, she was saying something about how, oh, you guys should like watch the movies again like live and like do like a live like reaction thing sometime on like Patreon or something.
Oh my God.
Because people love that sort of thing. And I'm like, that is a good idea to try one day. And then I was like, we should read his like emails. We should like read out his emails that he sent that he that Rick Riordan sent to the producers. I want to do have us do like a dramatic reenactment of those letters because they are so funny.
We could do that.
That's like a New Year's Eve sort of thing, just to be like silly for a while because there probably is going to be something or other that comes up related to Epic or Percy Jackson, like news ish wise. Obviously, Epic is going to come out the last part. But there probably will be something in the next week anyway. But even beyond that, that's just something like silly to
Yeah.
do at the end of the year when everyone is stressed out. And this year was, it was a year. It wasn't like super hard, I guess, in ways that other years were, but it wasn't very easy either. Um, and I know that people have a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen next, obviously. Like, the closer we get to January 20th, the more stressed out everyone is just going to be. And so, reading out Rick Riordan being the sassiest little Aries moon little bitch in the entire world is, it's really nice to read him being like, "You're ruining my movies. Stop making Rover so sexual. Why is he so sexual? This is a children's book series." And like literally being like, "I sent you an 18-page document with that I marked with a red pen to show all of your mistakes."
Yeah, he would. He
That's
would.
just so funny.
All right. Well,
I
we'll
just
we'll plan for
I
that.
just picture him like,
We'll plan for our reenactment, our dramatic reading, and we'll watch more Epic. It looks like we'll do Telemachus and a little bit of Calypso next time. So we'll plan for that. And Merry Christmas if you guys celebrate it, or I'm sure Hanukkah is probably done by now, to be honest. I'm really bad at following other holidays. So happy holidays, whatever holiday you happen to celebrate, and we'll see you guys one more time before the new year.
yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna go because I have my in-laws here too, so I should probably
Okay.
make an appearance by now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.